No, talking about
But
our money regarding money that was used to bail out the
no,
banks.
no,
It
of
is
course.
our money.
But I've told you, the
Yes.
bank's profits are not your money.
Okay.
Are you,
Well, the
are you
bank will
claiming the
not
bank's
make
profits
no.
are
The
your money?
bank will not make. Okay. Well, that's not our
Precisely.
money.
That's what I'm
Yes.
trying to tell you, that this was a very big innovation that we introduced in order to save Nigeria's banks, which it's never happened in any other country. That commercial banks were made or willingly cooperated to bring out their profits to contribute to salvation of a banking system that almost collapsed. So, yes, the banks are making a lot of profits, but I want you to know that some of that profit has gone into saving the system as a system. Now, the banking industry, I want to be very clear. We want Nigeria's banks to focus on lending to the real economy. We think they've been involved in a speculative culture for too long. We have that view. What have we done about it? One of the things we've done about it is to create a lending program for agriculture. Because we asked the banks, why aren't you lending to agriculture? And they say agriculture is too risky. So we said, okay, we will help you to de-risk agriculture. So we set up what we call NERSAL, Nigerian Incentive, risk-based lending system for agriculture, whereby we share the risk with the banks and we create incentives for them to lend to agriculture. And that program is now starting. And we believe that over the next several years, the solution to lending to agriculture is not going to be these intervention funds. You can't keep doing intervention funds forever. It's achieved something, but that is not the ideal state. The ideal state is that banks should be lending to certain sectors because they make money from lending to those sectors. But the people who are operating in those sectors are also getting credit. And that's what we want. So we want a situation where there's been less than 2% or 1.5% of total bank lending
Okay.
was to agriculture before 2011. Now it's 3%, and we want to take it to about 7%. And that's beginning to happen because the banks are beginning to see that in agriculture, by lending to the value chains, not just to the small holder farmer, but you look at the fertilizer, the inputs, the cultivation, you look at the processing, you look at storage, you look at transportation, then you look at export. So we're looking at the different value chains, taking a value chain approach to financing agriculture. And the banks are increasingly beginning to see their interest. Remember, banks are businesses, they're not NGOs.
Yes.
But we make sure we regulate them so that they do not, in the process of trying to make money, cheat or extort, and that's where the consumer protection role, of course, comes in, and that's one of the things my directorate
Okay.
does.
Well, it will
Just
if
before
we.
we go, let me
Yes.
just dwell on that for a moment. What about Greek finance banks? We had one or two of those in those days.
Yes, let
They
me
disappeared.
yeah, we have now the Bank of Agriculture, which is one of the development finance institutions. So it's a government bank. The problem that we have had, a lot of reforms are going on to start with in the Bank of Agriculture and in a number of these development finance institutions. But the problem we have had with those DFIs, as we say, is that because they were run by the government, they were not efficient. And so there is now a review of those development finance institutions to see how they could be recapitalized or restructured and how to bring in private money. We have an infrastructure bank now, which is partly private owned. And these things are part of the development of the financial system, which takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Our banking system today is far stronger than it used to be 10, 15 years ago. And we hope that in another 10, 15 years, we'll have a much more mature banking system that's lending money to manufacturers, lending money to SMEs or to whatever at interest rates that are much more affordable than they are now. And I believe we will get to that point. This is a work in progress. It's hard work, it's difficult work, but we're committed to it, and I believe we will get there.
Why are private people not interested in Greek banks?
No, I mean, we now have a new banking model. So you have specialized banks, you have commercial banks, you have merchant banks, and you have specialized banks under the new banking model. So if under the new banking model, you want to set up a bank that is lending solely to a Greek, that would be welcome. it's not a problem. But these are privately and commercially driven things. We no longer operate a command economy. It's where investors decide to put their money. But we're encouraging them to do that. But
Okay.
you can't legislate where investors decide to, what types of banks they decide to set up. You can just create a framework, an incentive that should make them know that there is a business opportunity here that can lead to the development of the country. That's what we've done with the new banking model, encouraging regional banks. A number of them have come back up again, as you may be aware, and that's to ensure that credit gets to the nooks and corners of the economy. It's not just concentrated in Lagos and yeah.
Okay, well, in terms of credit, there's so much we can talk about,
Sure,
but
absolutely.
we have
Yeah.
to wrap up this
Absolutely, yeah.
conversation now. But as we wrap up, in one or two sentences, the issue of excess liquidity mopping up by the central bank has been criticized so much by financial analysts. They're saying
What are they
that
criticizing?
the way they see it is that mopping up of excess liquidity is a way of taking fund away from the banks. And the mopping up, maybe very quickly, if you tell us the process of mopping up in a couple of sentences, and why
Yes.
do you have to continue to
Why
mop?
do you have to continue to mop up is that if there's excess liquidity in the economic system, that is what feeds inflation. So mopping
How
up,
do you determine that there's excess liquidity?
because it is measured, the money supply is measured by the central bank at any point in time. We can count the money in the formal banking in the formal system. So when we feel that it is at thresholds that it's not supposed to be at, and we can see that there's too much money chasing the availability of goods, that creates an inflationary scenario. And so what we do in the mopping up, we do that a lot through the open market operations, where the central bank will now sell bills, and people will now come and invest in central bank paper. So we hold your money and pay it back to you at an interest that's attractive to you. But that money, because you've used it to buy those
It
bills,
comes out of the system.
it comes out of the system. So that's what's mopping up.
Okay. All right. We can go on and on and on and on because it's a very interesting directorate that you manage within the central bank. So we want to say thank you very much, Mr. Kingsley Chiedu Moghalu, the central bank's deputy governor in charge of financial system stability. And we thank you very much for your time today.